Have you ever felt like you were following all the right advice, yet still found yourself chasing validation and affection from women who seemed just out of reach? Like you were always one step behind, never quite understanding the subtle game playing out in the background. Today, we're going to crack that code, with the help of Carl Jung himself. Imagine for a moment that the hidden rules of attraction aren't about being more charming or having more money. What if they're buried deep in the psychological shadows of every relationship? In the patterns you can't see, but that control you all the same. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, spent his life uncovering these unconscious forces that shape our connections. And he left us a blueprint, 7 hidden rules that most men ignore, but that can completely transform the way women see you. In this video, we're going to reveal these 7 dark truths, piece by piece. We're going to look beyond the polite conversations, the romantic gestures, and the Instagram perfect images, and see the raw, primal forces at play underneath. You're going to understand why some men can make women beg, not because they're playing games, but because they've learned to master their own mind first. So buckle up. This is not a fairy tale. It's a psychological deep dive, a challenge to everything you thought you knew about what women really want. Stay with me until the end, because once you see these truths, you'll never chase again. You'll only choose. Let's begin. Carl Jung believed that most people live with a shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that we keep hidden because we think it's unacceptable. And for men, that shadow is often the part of you that doesn't want to be nice. It's the part of you that wants to speak your mind, hold your ground, and live life on your own terms. But from a young age, you were taught to bury that. You were told to be agreeable, accommodating, and always considerate. You were told that's what makes you lovable. Yet ironically, it's exactly this denial of your authentic presence that makes you forgettable. Jung would argue that the first hidden rule is to reclaim your unapologetic presence, to stand in your own energy fully, not as a performance, not to impress, but because you know who you are and you don't apologize for it. This isn't about arrogance. It's about presence, the rare quality of a man who is comfortable in his own skin. Have you noticed how a man who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't qualify every word, instantly feels more magnetic? Women feel it too. They're drawn not to the words you say, but to the energy you hold. An energy that says, I'm not here to be chosen. I'm here to choose. This doesn't mean being loud or aggressive. It means being centered, rooted. When you're rooted in your own presence, you don't chase. You don't over-explain. You don't hide behind forced niceness. And suddenly, women who are used to controlling the dynamic with passive hints and emotional games find themselves disarmed. This is what Jung meant by integrating the shadow. The parts of you that are assertive, decisive, and even a little bit dangerous. They're not flaws. They're vital. They're the foundation of your masculine presence. When you bring those parts back into alignment, you become the man she can't ignore. Not because you're playing a role, but because you've stopped playing any roles at all. The man who has integrated his shadow doesn't need to prove himself. He doesn't ask for permission to be. And because he doesn't ask for permission, he becomes the one who sets the terms, the one who stands out from the crowd of men who think compliance is seduction. Presence isn't about what you say. It's about what you won't say. It's about the quiet confidence that doesn't flinch when she tests you. It's about the eyes that hold her gaze without apology, the tone that doesn't waver, the calm that doesn't crack. That's the first rule. Unapologetic presence. No more second guessing. No more explaining yourself. No more shrinking to fit into someone else's frame. Just you, fully present, fully rooted, fully alive. The kind of man who doesn't need to chase, because he's already where he wants to be. Most men are taught to see their feelings as something that needs to be fixed or hidden. You're supposed to be calm all the time, strong all the time. But Jung understood that this one-dimensional idea of masculinity is a prison, because you're not just a protector. You're not just a provider. You're also a man who can feel deeply, think deeply, and experience both vulnerability and strength at the same time. And here's the hidden rule that most men never realize. Real power comes from owning your contradictions, not denying them. When you reject the parts of yourself that don't fit the mold, you become fragmented. You become predictable. But when you integrate those parts, the fears, the doubts, the ambition, the tenderness, you become whole. And wholeness is magnetic. Have you ever noticed how some men seem to have this quiet authority even when they're not speaking? That's because they've stopped hiding from themselves. They've accepted their complexity. They're not ashamed of feeling anger or longing or uncertainty. They own it. They know that being a man isn't about never feeling lost. It's about finding the courage to stand in the middle of that confusion and say, "This is me." Jung's teachings remind us that integration is the key. When you own your inner contradictions, you become unpredictable, unconventional. You're no longer just a provider. You're a man who can hold her heart and still protect his own. And that makes you unforgettable. If you're ready to learn how to do this for yourself, I created a step-by-step system called the SIM method. A simple daily practice to integrate your shadow, cultivate presence, and find real inner clarity in just 5 minutes a day. You'll find the link in the pinned comment below. Because when you own your contradictions, you stop performing. You stop trying to be the man you think you should be. And you start becoming the man who can't be ignored. For most men, the path of relationships isn't just about winning a woman's attention. It's about trying to keep it. You learn early on that a woman's affection can be as fleeting as the seasons. One day you're her hero. The next, you're a stranger. And if you're like most men, you start to believe that this constant shifting is normal. You tell yourself that it's just how women are. Unpredictable, moody, impossible to satisfy. But Carl Jung would argue that the real issue isn't about her. It's about the unconscious contract you're making every time you chase her affection. The contract that says, "My worth depends on your love." This hidden agreement is at the root of emotional dependency. It's why you'll bend over backward to keep her happy. It's why you'll lie to yourself about what you really want. It's why you'll trade your own peace of mind for a few moments of feeling like you matter. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Most women can feel this neediness in you long before you ever say a word. She can sense when you're not fully rooted in yourself. She can sense when your calm is really just a mask for your fear of losing her. She can feel when you're holding your breath, waiting for her next move to tell you who you are. Jung would call this a projection trap. You're not loving her. You're loving the fantasy she represents. The idea that if she wants you, then you're enough. But that's not love. That's dependency. And dependency is the opposite of power. Think about the times you've lost yourself in a woman's approval. How many times have you walked on eggshells trying to avoid upsetting her? How many times have you silenced your own desires because you were afraid she might pull away? How many times have you mistaken her moods for your mission in life? The irony is that the more you chase her emotional highs and lows, the more she loses respect for you. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who lives for her moods. She wants a man who can stand tall even when she tries to pull him down. But you can't stand tall if you're still looking to her to tell you who you are. You can't be her rock if you're still trying to get her to be your mirror. Jung believed that real power comes from within, from integrating the parts of yourself that you're afraid to show. The parts that say, I want more than just your approval. The parts that say, I am enough whether you see it or not. The parts that say, I'm done performing. When you're stuck in emotional dependency, you're living for her love instead of living for your own truth. You're handing over your soul to someone who can't hold it for you. And in the process, you're becoming less of a man and more of a caretaker for her feelings. But here's what no one tells you. The moment you decide to stop needing her love to feel like a man is the moment she starts seeing you as one. It's not because you're manipulating her. It's because you've stopped manipulating yourself. You've stopped trying to control how she sees you. You've stopped trying to fix every little thing that goes wrong. You've stopped apologizing for wanting what you want. And when you do that, you become unpredictable. Not in a reckless way, but in a way that says, I'm not here to play your game. I'm here to live my life. This unpredictability is magnetic because it's rare. Most men are so busy trying to be the perfect partner that they forget how to be real. They forget that real masculinity isn't about controlling her feelings, it's about controlling your own. That's what she feels when you stop chasing her moods. She feels your center. She feels the part of you that doesn't waver, no matter what she throws at you. And that's what makes her lean in. Not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer playing at all. This is what Jung meant by the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you really are, not who the world says you should be. It's about owning your desires without shame. It's about setting boundaries without apology. It's about being willing to walk away rather than betray yourself. Most men think that walking away means giving up. But sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do, because it tells her, and it tells yourself, that you're done living in a world where your worth is measured by her moods. When you break that cycle, you reclaim your freedom. You stop living in reaction to her, and you start living in alignment with yourself. And that's the moment you stop being just another man and start becoming the man she can't control. Because here's the final truth Jung would have you remember. A woman who respects you will never ask you to shrink for her comfort. She'll never punish you for your authenticity. She'll never turn your confidence into a threat. The woman who's right for you will see your power and want to rise with you. Not because she needs you to be less, but because she's inspired by your willingness to be more. So stop waiting for her permission. Stop apologizing for being the man you are. Stop living for the next moment of her approval. Because the only woman worth having is the one who wants you whole, not the one who wants you smaller. Every time you swallow your words to keep her happy, there's a cost. Every time you nod along to avoid conflict, there's a cost. Every time you dim your light to make her feel more comfortable, there's a cost. But most men never stop to measure it. You're taught that relationships are built on compromise. But compromise, when it's constant, is no longer about partnership. It's about erasure. It's the slow fading of your own voice, your own needs, and your own dreams. Carl Jung would say that the unconscious price you pay for keeping the peace is your own authenticity. And once you've lost that, it doesn't matter how much love you think you're giving. You're not really there. You're just a reflection of what you think she wants. She might not even ask for that compromise directly. She doesn't have to. She'll show you in her reactions. The subtle shift in her eyes when you're too bold. The sigh when you're too honest. The way she pulls away when you dare to speak from the gut. It's enough to make you question yourself. And here's the silent tragedy. The more you adjust, the less she respects you. Not because she wants to, but because she can feel that you're living for her comfort, not your own truth. You're not leading, you're reacting. You're not her partner, you're her echo. And no woman is truly drawn to a man who's lost the courage to be his own. Jung's insight was that the masculine core is built to create, to protect, to take up space. When you betray that instinct for the sake of keeping her close, you're at war with yourself. And no relationship can survive that quiet war. The real test isn't how well you can compromise. It's how well you can stand for yourself without apology. Because a man who can't hold his own boundaries can never truly hold a woman's heart. This doesn't mean you never bend. It means you never break your own spine to make her feel taller. True respect, the kind that turns attraction into something real, comes when you can look her in the eye and say, "This is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I will not tolerate." Not as a threat, not as an ultimatum, but as a simple, grounded truth. When you claim that truth, you stop living in reaction to her moods. You stop measuring your worth by her approval. And ironically, that's when she feels safest. Not because you're trying to make her comfortable, but because she knows you won't betray yourself to keep her around. Jung taught that the integration of the shadow, the parts of you that are wild, strong, and unafraid, is what makes you whole. It's what makes you magnetic. It's what makes you a man she can't mold or manage. Because when you live as your full self, you're no longer playing the game of compromise. You're playing the game of life. And that's the only one worth winning. In every conversation, every glance, every moment where you choose to hold back instead of showing your full self, you pay a price. It's a price most men don't even realize they're paying until it's too late. The slow erosion of their presence. Not because they're unworthy, but because they've grown so used to hiding that they've forgotten how to stand out. Carl Jung understood this subtle death of the masculine spirit. He taught that to deny parts of yourself, to keep the peace or to make someone else comfortable, is to trade your life for a kind of living death. You're physically there, but the fire that made you unique flickers and fades. And in that quiet fade, you become forgettable. Most men don't see it happening in real time. They tell themselves they're just being supportive. They tell themselves they're being good partners, good listeners, good men. But underneath those noble-sounding reasons lies a simple fear. The fear of rejection. It's easier to mold yourself into what she wants than to risk her disapproval. It's easier to nod along, to let her lead the dance, to smooth out your rough edges, because that's what you've been taught women want. But here's what you don't see when you're caught in that mindset. The very thing you're doing to keep her is what makes her drift away. Women don't forget men who are clear about who they are and what they want. They don't forget men who speak with quiet certainty. They don't forget the man who doesn't apologize for the edges of his truth. But when you start softening those edges, you become another echo in a world already too full of men who have lost their own voice. Jung would say this is the anima's trap, the unconscious pressure to mold yourself to the desires of the feminine, to become the mirror that reflects her needs back to her, rather than the man who stands as his own pillar. And most men, without realizing it, slip into this role. They become the caretaker, the helper, the endlessly accommodating partner who believes that love is about giving everything, even if it means giving up himself. And at first, she might love it. She might call you perfect. She might tell you how safe you make her feel. But safety without challenge becomes comfort without passion. And comfort without passion is the breeding ground of disinterest. You see it in the way her eyes glaze over when you stop speaking your mind. You see it in how her laughter fades when you stop being unpredictable. You feel it in the silent distance that grows when you stop showing her the edges of your soul, the raw parts that aren't polished or polite. This doesn't mean you should be cruel or reckless. It means you should never lose your center in the name of being liked. Because every time you choose comfort over authenticity, you become just another man she'll forget the moment you're gone. Jung taught that the shadow, the parts of you that you've been told are too much, is not something to fear. It's your life force. It's the seat of your desires, your convictions, your purpose. When you deny it, you deny the part of you that makes you unforgettable. Think about the men you remember. They're not the ones who tried to be everything for everyone. They're the ones who had the courage to stand as they were, even if it made some people uncomfortable. They're the ones who could say, "This is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I will not compromise." A man like that doesn't have to shout to be heard. His presence speaks louder than any performance. And in a world that tries to turn every man into a shadow of himself, that presence becomes rare and magnetic. It's not about being dominant or controlling. It's about being unshakable in your truth. Because a man who doesn't need to bend himself to please others commands a respect that can't be faked. This is the paradox most men never see. The more you try to be what she wants, the less she sees you at all. The more you hide your contradictions to keep her comfortable, the more she feels something missing, even if she can't name it. And here's why. She doesn't want to be with a man she can control. She wants to be with a man she can respect. And respect is born from seeing you live for something bigger than her comfort. The man who becomes forgettable is the one who lives for her moods. The man she can't forget is the one who lives for his own truth. This doesn't mean being indifferent or unkind. It means being willing to lose her rather than lose yourself. Because only a man who can let go of her approval can ever truly own his power. Jung would say that individuation, the process of becoming your own man, requires you to face the fear of standing alone. It requires you to step beyond the boyhood dream of being everything for her and into the manhood reality of being everything for yourself first. When you do that, you stop performing. You stop chasing. You stop playing the endless game of guessing what she wants and start asking what you want. And when you live from that place, you're no longer just another man in the crowd. You're the man she can't predict. The man she can't mold. The man who stands out. Not because he's trying to, but because he refuses to be anyone but himself. So here's the final thought for this part. If you find yourself always wondering how to be more what she wants, you're already on the path to becoming forgettable. Because real men don't ask, "What does she want me to be?" They ask, "Who am I willing to be?" Even if she never understands it. And that's the difference between a man she remembers and a man she never truly saw at all. By now, you've seen what most men never see. The invisible ways you trade your own strength for the comfort of someone else. The slow, subtle slide from presence to performance, from authenticity to compromise, from being a man to becoming a shadow. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that the true enemy isn't outside of you. It's not her. It's not them. It's the part of you that fears your own power, the part that wants to be liked more than it wants to be free. You don't need permission to be the man you are. You don't need her to validate your worth. Because the real prize in this life isn't her approval, it's your own. And no woman, no matter how captivating, is worth the cost of losing that. So let this be your final reminder. Never trade your voice for her smile. Never shrink so she can stand taller. Never soften your truth to make her feel safe. Because the man who can't stand for himself will never stand out to her or to the world. You are not here to be forgettable. You are here to be undeniable. The question isn't whether she will choose you. The question is whether you will finally choose yourself. And when you do, you become the kind of man she can never control and never truly forget.